No one had seen her face and lived. Across 100 worlds, her name was whispered with fear. The Empress of Ashes. Her voice could melt steel, her hands tore through starships like paper. For 100 years, no army stood against her. When she raised her hand, empires burned. When she unleashed her ultimate attack, even the strongest warriors disintegrated into dust. And yet one human stood at the center of the blast. Smoke rose around him. Buildings had vanished. Trees were vaporized. Soldiers gone. All life around him had turned into blackened shadows on stone. But the man still stood there, not untouched, burned, bloodied, broken, but alive. Steam rose from his skin. His armor was half melted. His face was cut open, blood dripping into his beard. But his eyes were calm. He looked up at the sky, at the Empress who floated above like a living god. She stared at him, unmoving. For the first time in a century, her face showed confusion. The man spat blood and smiled. My turn? The world froze. This was not how it was supposed to go. The Empress had destroyed generals, champions, even ancient machines. She had ended the great dragon lords of Zelnar, wiped out the crystalline queens of Vator. Her attack never failed, but this human had taken the full force and he wasn't even on his knees. The commanders watching from distant ships stared at their screens, not speaking. Who was this man? His name was Dax Brenner, a mechanic, a Terran. No noble blood, no magic, just scars, stubbornness, and something strange behind his eyes. She descended slowly, her cloak of fire flickering. Her feet touched the ground just a few meters away. The world around them remained dead silent. You should be dead, she said, her voice like a storm trapped in glass. I've been told that before, Dax replied, wiping ash from his cheek. She narrowed her eyes. Her aura still burned the air. The pressure around her would crush a normal being. But Dax didn't flinch. He didn't kneel. He simply stood there like the war hadn't ended yet. She had fought trillions. None had faced her ultimate strike and survived. And yet this man didn't even have a weapon. Explain, she said, stepping forward. Her hair shimmered like hot smoke. Her armor looked like molten glass layered over alien metal. Her skin glowed faintly with power. Still, Dax didn't blink. He shrugged. Bad day for you, I guess. A sound escaped her lips. Not a laugh. Not anger. Something between the two. The soldiers on the orbiting ships waited for the sky to collapse again. They didn't understand what they were seeing. And neither did she. She raised her hand again, unsure. But her fingers trembled, not fear. Something worse. Memory. Her instincts, honed over 1,000 battles, whispered something she had never felt before. Danger. Not from armies. Not from technology. From him. Dax stepped forward now. Just one step. The ground cracked beneath his boots. She noticed something she hadn't before. His shadow was wrong. It didn't match his form. It flickered with shapes, lines, symbols. You've changed something, she said quietly. No, he replied. You did. When you used that attack. He reached up to the melted edge of his armor and peeled it away like burnt cloth. Underneath was a strange glow. Not tech, not magic. Something older. And for the first time, the Empress of Ashes took a step back. Dax just smiled again. You were looking for someone who could survive your power. Maybe it was never meant to be survived. Maybe it was meant to wake something up. He cracked his neck and rolled his shoulders. Sparks danced on his skin. She watched in silence. You don't understand what you've done, he said. Then he raised his hand and the sky shifted. The clouds didn't just move, they twisted, like they were being pulled toward Dax. The burned ground around him started to glow. Old forgotten symbols flickered beneath the ash. They weren't human. They weren't alien either. They belonged to something older than stars. The Empress of Ashes stepped back again. Her hand was still raised, but it no longer held the weight of certainty. She had crushed entire civilizations with her ultimate attack. She had brought kings to their knees. Now she was facing a man who should have died, and instead he was changing the sky. What are you? She asked, her voice quieter than before. I was just a man, Dax said, until you hit me with the force of a dying sun. His fingers opened slowly and light leaked through the gaps. The strange glow beneath his skin was spreading. Not like fire, not like energy, like memory, like something returning. The Empress narrowed her eyes. You're not channeling power. You're becoming it. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. Around them, the battlefield began to crack open. Red-hot lines of energy split the earth in patterns older than language. Her soldiers watching from orbit screamed as scanners failed. Data melted. Maps collapsed. What they saw didn't match any system, any code. This wasn't science, this wasn't magic. This was something else. Something lost. The Empress had ruled for a century with fire and fury. She had no equal. Until now. Until this strange human touched something even she feared to name. She flew upward, fast as lightning, rising above the crater. Her voice echoed like thunder. "Stand down, human. You are awakening forces you cannot control." Dax looked up at her, his expression calm. "Maybe, but it's my turn, remember?" Then he moved. One step. The world responded. Pillars of light erupted from the ground, circling him. Not beams of energy, columns of memory, solid light from forgotten times. And inside each column, images flickered. A world consumed by war, giants made of metal screaming. A queen with 6 eyes weeping into the void. A symbol. The same one glowing in Dax's chest, burning across the surface of a dying moon. The Empress hovered above him, her wings of flame growing brighter. "Stop this, can't," he said. "You lit the fuse. I'm just the fire now," she raised both hands. The sky turned white, another blast. Even stronger than before. The kind of power that destroyed timelines, erased bloodlines, burned stars from the edge of memory. It struck the ground and swallowed Dax completely. Silence. Ash fell. Everything stopped. The command ships held their breath. But then, the light didn't fade, it changed, it pulsed. And out of it, Dax stepped forward again, eyes glowing, shirt burned away, symbols alive across his chest and arms. The ground behind him was no longer shattered. It was healed, reformed, like time itself bent around him. The Empress watched, stunned. "That should have erased you." "It did," he said softly. "But someone else woke up in the ashes." She felt it now, not just fear, but recognition. Her power, her attack. It didn't just hurt him. It unlocked something buried deep inside him. Something tied to the beginning. Something her kind had sealed away eons ago. The Empress landed, standing before him once more. Her voice trembled. "What do you want?" Dax looked at his hands. The symbols faded. "Just slightly, I want to understand," he said. Then he looked at her, not with anger, not with fear, but something else. Curiosity. Sadness. Strength. "You've ruled for 100 years with fire," he said. "But do you even know what you're guarding?" She didn't answer. Because deep inside, she didn't know. And now the one person who might was standing before her. Still alive. Still burning. Still just getting started. The Empress of Ashes stood still, her long black armor gleaming with fading heat. Around her the battlefield had gone quiet. The wind no longer carried screams or smoke. Just silence. A strange waiting silence. Like the world itself was listening. Dax took another step forward. Not with anger. Not with hate. Just steady. Like gravity pulled him toward something forgotten. He looked at the marks on the ground. The glowing patterns beneath the ash had grown. They stretched outward in circles, pulsing with a soft, deep hum. He didn't know what they were. Not yet, but part of him did. Something inside him whispered, not human. Not alien. Something before both. "You don't know what this place is," he said quietly. The Empress didn't speak. "This isn't just a battlefield. It's a lock," her eyes flashed. "You talk like you were there when it was sealed." Dax touched one of the glowing lines. It was warm, alive. His fingers trembled not from pain but from memory. A memory that didn't belong to him. A child crying in a golden hallway. A roar that shook galaxies. A woman with fire for eyes whispering, "We must bury it." Even from ourselves, he pulled his hand back. These symbols, they're not just decoration. They were meant to contain something. And when you used your power here, "I broke the lock," the Empress finished, her voice low. Dax nodded. "Then what did we just release?" She asked. "I don't think it was a what." Dax looked at her. "I think it was me." The Empress stepped forward now, her flames dimmed. She didn't look like a conqueror anymore. She looked like someone trying to understand the storm she had unleashed. "You're not the first to stand against me," she said. "But you are the first who made the world answer back." Dax knelt slowly, placing his palm on the center of the glowing circle. The ground pulsed beneath him. A vibration moved through his bones. He closed his eyes. He saw it again. A great war, older than time. Not between empires, but between forces. Between guardians and destroyers. Between something sacred and something wild. In that war, a decision was made. To hide a weapon inside a soul. To bury it so deep no one would ever find it. But now it had been found. By accident. Or on purpose. Dax opened his eyes. I think your attack didn't just fail. I think it triggered something, a key. And I was the door. The Empress stared at him. For the first time, she didn't look powerful. She looked uncertain. Then we have a problem, she said. What kind of problem? She pointed behind him. Dax turned. Far in the distance, beyond the horizon, the sky had changed. No longer bright. It swirled with something black and gold, like a hole tearing through reality. From inside it came a sound, a hum, deep and slow. Like the breath of something huge and waking, something had noticed, and it was coming. You woke something else, she said. I didn't mean to. Neither did I. They stood together now, the Empress and the man who shouldn't have survived. Their war paused, not from peace, but from a greater threat. One neither of them understood. Not yet. Dax looked up at the sky again. If that thing's been asleep all this time, what made it stir now? The Empress answered with a whisper. You did. The sky tore open like a wound. The rift expanded, spinning slowly with dark gold and black energy. It pulsed with a rhythm deep and steady, like a giant heart beginning to beat after a long sleep. The wind howled across the dead battlefield, bending trees that were already turned to ash. The soldiers in orbit panicked. Their systems failed again. Screens flashed warnings. Sensors screamed. Something massive was coming through. Dax stared at it without blinking. The Empress moved beside him, not floating now, walking. Her power still flickered around her shoulders, but she wasn't ready to attack. She was ready to understand. I've seen many things, she said. But never that. Dax's voice was steady. I have, in a dream, or a memory that didn't belong to me. As the rift expanded, strange shapes pushed against the edge. They weren't ships. They weren't creatures. They were like bones of something ancient wrapped in smoke and gold flame. A low voice filled the air, though no mouth spoke it. Key. Awakened. Door. Opened. Dax flinched. His chest glowed again, the symbol inside pulsing with the same rhythm as the voice. The Empress narrowed her eyes. It's talking to you, he nodded slowly. Or remembering me, she stepped back. You're not a soldier. You're something else. I was human, he said. You still are. No, he replied. Not fully. Not anymore. The rift screamed. Out of it came something tall. Taller than the trees. Taller than buildings. A figure made of broken metal and molten light. It had no face, only a smooth plate where a head should be, and rows of runes burned along its arms. Its steps shook the ground, and though it looked like a machine, Dax felt no tech. Only memory. The Empress raised her hand ready to strike. Dax stopped her with just a glance. Wait. The giant paused, its head turning toward Dax. The runes on its arm shifted. New ones appeared. They matched the ones burned into Dax's chest. Recognition. It wasn't an enemy. It was part of him, or once had been. The voice returned, deeper now. Weapon of origin. Reconnection complete, Dax swayed, feeling his legs weaken. His mind filled with more images. A war of gods. A shattered star. A group of warriors who gave up everything and sealed their souls inside human bloodlines. He was one of them. Not born, but chosen. The Empress stood quiet now, watching him closely. Her fire dimmed. You were hidden here, she said. On purpose. Buried in a life of machines and metal. No empire would notice. And I wouldn't notice myself, Dax whispered, until I used my power on you. He looked at her. You didn't fail. You woke me up. The giant knelt before him now, shaking the ground. It raised one glowing hand and placed it over its chest. Then it whispered again, others, waking. The seal is broken. Dax stepped forward, his hand shaking. He reached toward the giant and touched its arm. His body lit up instantly. Every rune on his skin flared with gold light. His mind filled with names, old ones. Not people, but powers. Forces of the original Guardians and the threat they once fought. They're coming back, he said aloud. The Empress frowned. Who? He turned to her, voice quiet. The ones we locked away. The ones worse than both of us. She felt it too now, that cold truth pressing in from the sky. You and I, she said, may have started as enemies. But we might be all that's left, Dax finished. The rift behind them groaned again. More giants moved in the mist, and farther behind them, something else stirred. Not a guardian. Something hungry. Something that had waited longer than war. The air felt heavier. The rift still pulsed with gold light, but something deeper now moved within it. Not just guardians. Not just giants of memory. There was a second rhythm. Colder. Slower. Like the heartbeat of something that didn't belong in any world. Dax stepped back from the kneeling construct. The runes on his chest dimmed slightly, but they still pulsed in time with the glowing marks across the battlefield. He looked to the Empress. They're coming, he said. Then fight, she answered. You were awakened for a reason. Dax shook his head. It's not that simple. They're not like you or me. They don't want to win. They want everything erased. Behind them, the sky began to bleed black. From the rift's edge, another figure emerged, but this one wasn't like the others. It had no form, just a shape that moved like smoke dipped in oil. Long limbs bent the wrong way. Its body shifted every second, never the same shape twice. But the worst part was its face. It didn't have one, but everyone who looked at it thought they saw their own. Dax stared at it and felt something cold press against the back of his mind. The Empress stumbled slightly. She caught herself, but her fire dimmed. What is that thing? She asked. Dax's voice was barely a whisper. It's one of the forgotten. The word hung in the air like poison. The Empress had heard legends. Creatures from before time. From before stars had names. They weren't destroyed. They were hidden, trapped by forces older than war itself. You unlocked this? She asked. Dax nodded slowly. Not on purpose. But when you hit me with your full power, it cracked more than just stone. The shapeless being slithered forward, its limbs stretching unnaturally. Where it stepped, the ground turned gray, life drained. Even the air felt thinner, then it spoke, not in sound but in thought. Child of flame. Key of memory. You both belong to me. The voice hit them like thunder. The Empress dropped to one knee. Blood dripped from her nose. Her power flared wildly, unable to focus. Dax gritted his teeth. The rune on his chest glowed hotter, fighting the pressure in his mind. I don't belong to anyone, he growled. The being twisted its shape into a vague smile, or maybe it was just mocking him. It reached out one arm, stretching across the sky like a shadow with no source. The kneeling guardian beside Dax stood up. It walked forward, placing itself between the human and the forgotten being. The air shook as the two faced each other. Then the guardian spoke again. You are not yet whole. Dax blinked. What? The guardian turned slightly. You were awakened too early. You do not remember what you truly are. The Empress, still struggling to her feet, looked up. Then tell him. There is no time, the guardian replied. The forgotten being lunged. Its body stretched across the ground like a flood. It struck the guardian with impossible speed. The impact was blinding. Energy burst outward in every direction. The mountain behind them cracked in two. When the light cleared, the guardian was standing, but its left side was missing. Torn away by the strike, it didn't fall. It turned its head toward Dax. Run. Dax stepped back. I can fight. You will. But not yet. You need the other half. What other half? The guardian reached into its chest. A glowing shard pulsed there, barely stable. It pulled the shard free and placed it in Dax's hand. A flood of memories surged through him. Names. Faces, weapons, stars being born and shattered. The Empress grabbed his arm. We can't fight that thing here. Dax looked at the sky, then at her. Then we run. But not away. We run to finish waking up. Behind them, the battlefield burned again, and the forgotten being smiled, whispering, You cannot run from what you were. They ran through a world changed by ancient memory. The Empress of Ashes flew ahead, her flames flickering low as if the atmosphere itself resisted her. Dax moved behind her, fast but uncertain, the glowing shard gripped tightly in his hand. Each step he took sparked the ground beneath him. Not with fire, but with symbols, flashes of shapes too old to name. They didn't speak. There was no time. Behind them, the battlefield was gone, swallowed. The Guardian's remains had vanished into light, and the Forgotten One was no longer chasing, it was spreading. Slowly, calmly, like it knew exactly where Dax would end up. The Empress finally stopped atop a jagged cliff of black rock, eyes glowing dimly as she scanned the valley below. Dax reached her side, chest still burning with the new shard inside him. "Where are we going?" he asked, breathless. She didn't look at him. "There's a place, south of the Obsidian River, under the ruins of Zytar." "I don't know what that means," she turned to him then. "It's where they hid the others. Where the old ones buried your kind before the First War began." Dax frowned. "My kind? You were not made," she said. "You were remembered. You are the echo of something that should have ended." He gripped his chest as the pain surged again. The runes on his arms and neck flared. The shard the Guardian gave him was fusing with the older symbol already inside him. Together they were forming a new shape, one that pulsed like a heartbeat. "You need to find the second shard," the Empress said. "And then what?" "Then you'll remember what you are." "All of it." Dax shook his head. "I don't know if I want to." "You don't have a choice." Thunder cracked the sky behind them. The Forgotten One was moving. The air went cold, and time itself felt slower. Colors faded, sound dulled. The world around them bent in unnatural ways. Birds stopped flying. Wind stopped blowing. A dead silence spread in every direction, and a whisper followed them. "Come back to sleep, little light." Dax clenched his fists. "It knows I'm incomplete," the Empress nodded. "And it won't strike until it knows you've found the rest." Suddenly the cliff beneath them rumbled. The black rock split, opening into a spiral staircase carved into the mountain itself. It wasn't made by tools. It was formed by memory. The Empress looked down into the darkness. "I cannot go with you beyond this point," she said. "Why not?" Her eyes flickered. "Because this place was made to keep my kind out. You were meant to survive it." Dax stared into the shadows below. The air smelled like metal and dust. The runes on his chest glowed brighter the closer he stepped. He turned back to her. "Why are you helping me?" The Empress was silent for a moment, then she spoke. "Because your kind built mine. And we failed you." Dax didn't understand, but the pain in his chest was too much to argue. He nodded once, then started down the stairs, step by step, deeper into the dark. Each step echoed like thunder. The walls began to glow with runes, matching the ones on his skin. The deeper he went, the more memories returned. Faces, names, a world that once existed without death, and the betrayal that ended it. At the final step, he reached a great door, and behind it, silence, but not empty silence. Waiting silence. Dax touched the door. The symbols on it flared to life. The door opened. Inside was a second shard, floating in the air, a mirror of the first. He stepped forward. As he touched it, the room exploded in light. Pain, fire, energy, and a voice. His voice. "You are now whole, but you are no longer alone." The room pulsed with golden light. Dax stood at the center, arms open, breathing slow and deep as the second shard merged into his chest. The pain was gone now, replaced by something colder, something heavier. His mind wasn't just his anymore. It stretched wider, through time, through memory, through things no human should have ever known. He dropped to one knee as vision struck him. A battlefield made of stars. 100 beings, each like him, each glowing, each standing between darkness and the end. A voice, sharp but calm, echoed inside him. "We are the Echo Forged. We were sealed to protect creation. You are the last key." Dax gritted his teeth. "I'm not one of you. I was just a man." Not anymore. Outside, the sky shook. The Forgotten One was close now. Its arrival bent time around it like waves. Trees turned to ash without burning. Air folded and screamed. The Empress stood alone on the cliff, watching the horizon turn to black and gold. Her flames were smaller now, tighter, focused like a blade. She did not run. She waited. Below her, the chamber's golden light grew stronger. Then Dax walked out. But he was different now. His eyes glowed faintly, not like fire, but like truth made solid. The runes along his arms had changed. They no longer flickered randomly. They flowed like sentences, old language, powerful and clear. The Empress turned to him. Her breath caught. "You carry all of them," she said. Dax nodded. "They're in me. All the voices that were locked away. I can hear them." She stepped back slightly. "Are they guiding you?" His voice was deeper now, steadier. "No, they're watching. I have to choose." Above them, the clouds exploded. The Forgotten One descended. Its form was worse now, barely held together. Its limbs reached across the sky, touching clouds and tearing through space like paper. Its many-mouthed thoughts whispered into the minds of everyone who could still hear. You cannot save this world. You carry too much. You were built to break. Dax stepped forward. Maybe, but I'm still standing. He looked at the Empress. You've seen what it can do. I need your help. Her lips twisted. You would fight beside me? After I nearly killed you? I'm alive because of you, he said. And maybe this thing is here because of me. So yeah, I'll fight beside anyone who stands against it. The Empress of Ashes didn't smile, but something in her eyes softened. She raised her arms, her flames snapping into place. Then we burned together. Dax lifted his hand. From the sky, the Guardian's light returned, pieces of broken memory reforming around him. A blade formed in his palm. Not metal, not fire. Something older. The shape of choice shaped by will. The Forgotten One lunged, they charged. The world trembled. The Empress struck first, her fire slamming into the creature's face. It screamed, not in sound, but through light and vibration. Dax followed, his blade cutting through its shadowed arm. The moment it hit, the sky cracked. Inside the Forgotten One, something pulsed, something ancient and angry. You were ours, it bellowed. I was never yours, Dax shouted. The ground shattered under their fight. Trees turned to dust. Rivers boiled. The valley sank, and above them the stars dimmed. This was no longer about power, it was about will. Dax moved faster now, each strike pushing back the darkness. His runes burned brighter. His memories grew clearer. He remembered the promise made before time began, that when the final lock broke, one of them would rise. He was that one. Not chosen by others, chosen by pain. By survival. By his own stubborn heart. And now he was no longer alone inside. He was a weapon, and the war had only just begun. The valley was gone. Where once there were cliffs and rivers, now only a crater of light and shadow remained. At the center of it all, Dax and the Empress stood side by side, scorched, bleeding, but still fighting. Above them loomed the Forgotten One, but even its terrible form was shifting now. It was changing. The creature's limbs melted into smoke. Its voices layered on top of each other, louder, faster, more desperate. Every second it stayed in the open, its power leaked. The world rejected it. Time pushed against it. It had slipped through the crack, but this universe did not want it here. So it revealed its true shape. The smoke collapsed inward, and from it rose a single figure. Tall, thin, glowing with inverted colors. No eyes, no mouth. Only a smooth face that reflected everything around it like a mirror made of memory. When Dax looked into that face, he saw 1,000 versions of himself, and none of them survived. The voice returned. You were meant to forget. You were built to fade, but you chose to awaken. Dax raised his blade. You gave me no choice, and we gave you peace. A quiet life, a life without this burden. You call slavery peace? The Empress snapped, fire circling her fists. You buried your enemies inside children, locked them away, then called it mercy. The figure turned to her. You are not innocent either, child of flame. Your empire fed on ruin. She didn't deny it. Dax stepped forward. So this is it? You want me to lie back down and forget again? The figure's head tilted. We want you to choose. Surrender the memory. Seal it again. Or burn the universe to protect it, he blinked. You're giving me a choice. You are complete now. You can hold the power. But if you keep it, you become like us, and we were never meant to rule. The Empress turned to him, fire dimming. They're not lying, she said. I can feel it now. This weight you carry, it's too old. Too large. Even I wouldn't survive it for long. Dax's hands trembled. The runes on his arms flickered again. The blade in his grip began to vibrate, unstable. And deep inside his mind, the voices of the Echo Forged began to murmur. Some begged him to fight, others told him to rest. A few whispered the truth he feared most. You are not a hero. You were a weapon, nothing more. He dropped to one knee, overwhelmed. The Empress grabbed his shoulder. Listen to me, she said, her voice softer now. You're not just a weapon. You're not their tool or mine. You've already broken the pattern. That means you can break the cycle too. He looked up at her. I don't want to become like them. Then don't. The figure raised its hand. Energy spiraled above its palm, a seed of forgetting. Pure and clean. A way to seal the echo forged back inside Dax, to put him back to sleep. The voice offered one last time. Choose now. Silence or war. Dax stood. He looked at the Empress, then at the broken sky, then at the blade in his hand. He closed his fingers around the hilt, and the blade stopped shaking. He turned to the Forgotten One and said 3 simple words. I remember everything. Then he raised the blade and stabbed it into his own chest. The world screamed. The runes exploded with light. Not destruction, not surrender. Something new. The birth of a third path. Light tore through the sky like lightning frozen in place. But there was no explosion. No scream, no fire. Just stillness. Dax stood at the center, the blade still buried in his chest. Yet there was no blood. Instead, glowing threads of energy spread from the blade's hilt across his body like roots digging into soil. Every rune on his arms and neck glowed, faster, brighter, until they formed a single blazing mark on his chest. The Forgotten One staggered back. It spoke, but this time, its voice was different. No longer calm. Now it was afraid. This is not the pattern. This is not in the design. The Empress watched, speechless. She had felt power before. Had used it. Controlled it. Burned galaxies with it. But this was something else. Dax wasn't glowing like a star. He was becoming something beyond light. His body stayed solid, but his presence filled the air like gravity. His thoughts pressed into the space around them. Not loudly, just enough to be felt. I didn't choose war, Dax said quietly, and I didn't choose to sleep. He looked up at the Forgotten One. His voice echoed without force, yet it shook the ground. I made a new choice. The shard within him, the one given by the Guardian, merged completely with the second half. The blade disappeared, melted into his chest like it had never been separate. And then, everything changed. The battlefield returned, but healed. The crater filled with water. The burned trees grew back taller and stronger. The wind carried warmth, not ash. Time didn't reverse. It moved forward. Differently, the Empress turned in place. What did you do? I refused both paths, Dax replied. So the world gave me a new one. The Forgotten One screamed, not in sound but in reaction. Its mirrored face cracked. Its limbs spasmed. The very rules it used to exist were unraveling. You broke the lock, it said, its form collapsing into shifting ash. You refused the order, and the forgetting. You made a third law, Dax nodded once. Yeah? Then we are all undone. The sky above them shattered like glass. But instead of falling into darkness, something else emerged. Light shapes, others, the other echo forged. They had been silent inside Dax, scattered, locked away for eons. But now, with the path unsealed, they stepped free. Not as warriors. Not as weapons, as people, beings of memory. Carriers of balance, they took no weapons. They didn't strike the Forgotten One. They surrounded it, and together, they forgave it. The Empress watched stunned as the creature fell to its knees. It didn't burn. It didn't die. It just stopped. Dax walked forward and placed a hand on the Forgotten One's shoulder. You were part of us once, he said. But fear turned you cruel. The creature looked up. Its form melted away, revealing something small inside, a shape no larger than a child curled and shaking. I wanted silence, it whispered. I know, Dax said, and then he let it rest, not in a prison, not in death, in peace. For the first time in history, the Echo Forge did not destroy their enemy. They healed it. The sky sealed itself slowly. The wind returned. The battlefield was no longer a place of war. It had become sacred ground. The Empress stood beside Dax, unsure what to say. You didn't become a god, she finally said. He smiled. Didn't want to. But you're no longer just a man, maybe not. He looked at the horizon. The others, his kind, were already fading, returning to whatever place waited beyond memory. But Dax remained. I'm staying, he said. Why? He looked at her. Because this world still burns, and maybe it's time someone chose to stay and heal it. The war was over, but the world still wore the scars. Ash still clung to the mountains. Broken cities lay silent across the stars. The memory of fear lingered in the eyes of every species that had once bent the knee to the Empress, or hid from her wrath. And now they all asked the same question. Who is he? They didn't understand what had happened in the crater. They only knew that something dark had come and something brighter had stopped it. Not with a weapon, not with destruction, but with a choice. A third path. Dax had returned from the crater alone. The Echo Forged were gone, their purpose complete. The Forgotten One had disappeared into sleep, sealed by forgiveness rather than force. The ancient blade no longer glowed inside him, but something remained, a presence, a memory that wasn't heavy anymore. He no longer saw past lives in flashes. They were part of him now, silent but present. A chorus behind his thoughts. Not commanding, just watching, trusting him. Dax had built a home where the crater once was. Simple, quiet. A cabin of old metal and glass, surrounded by green hills and growing trees. The world healed slowly, but it healed, and she came back too. The Empress. No longer of ashes. She had shed her title like a second skin. Her armor, once a weapon of fear, now shimmered with peace. Her fire burned lower, no longer hungry. She had changed too. She had chosen to stay. You could have left, Dax said one evening as they watched the stars return to their natural places. So could you, she answered. He nodded. I think people expect us to be more than what we are. We were, she said. Now we're just trying to be enough. Silence passed between them. Not heavy. Not awkward. Just real. She turned to him. You were the last weapon. And you were the last conqueror. They shared a look. Funny how neither of us ended the way we started, he said. Or maybe, she replied, we ended exactly how we were meant to. A breeze passed through the valley. For the first time in 100 years, it didn't smell like smoke. Ships came in time. Curious ones. Pilots, traders, diplomats. They arrived at the edge of the valley and waited. They didn't dare land unless he allowed it. Some brought offerings. Some brought questions. And some just came to look at him. Dax never turned them away, but he didn't speak of the war. He didn't tell them about the blade or the runes or the voices that once lived inside him. He simply told them this. You are more than what you were made for. Those words echoed across planets, across species, across empires. And soon the galaxy began to change, not from power, not from fear, but from the memory of a man who chose not to forget. A man who refused to become a god, and instead chose to remain human. A new age began, one where rulers no longer crushed worlds with force but listened, where children no longer feared the stars, where the Empress of Ashes became something else entirely, and where Dax, just Dax, lived by a river that once marked the end of everything, and now marked a beginning. He didn't glow anymore. He didn't need to. Because the fire that once raged across the galaxy now burned in quieter ways, in how he listened, in how he stayed, in how he chose peace, even when war had been carved into his bones. And every night, as the stars blinked back into their rightful place, he whispered the same 3 words to the sky. Not my turn. And finally, no one asked again.